Every major financial reset in history had a moment. A crash. A war. A collapse so loud it forced people to accept change. But what if the biggest financial reset of all never had one? No riots, no empty banks, no dramatic headlines, just quiet adjustments, new rules, subtle shifts in how money works. And one day, without voting, without consent, without even noticing, the system was reset. Not through destruction, but through design. Today, we're told that resets only happen during crises, that chaos creates opportunity, that systems collapse before they're rebuilt. But this reset didn't need fear. It didn't need emergency powers. It happened while people were working, spending, saving, trusting. This is the story of how the financial system rewired itself in plain sight, and why the most powerful resets don't announce themselves at all. To understand the reset, we first need to understand what existed before it. For most of modern history, money was tied to something tangible: gold, silver, physical reserves. Governments could still borrow, but borrowing had consequences. Run out of gold, and credibility vanished. Print too much money, and the system broke quickly. Debt was dangerous not because it was immoral, but because it was limited. This forced discipline. Budgets mattered. Trade imbalances mattered. Interest rates reflected real scarcity. But these limits were inconvenient. They slowed growth, constrained wars. They restricted political promises. So slowly, governments and financial institutions searched for a way around the limits, not by breaking the system, but by redefining it. The first step wasn't dramatic. It was framed as modernization. Gold standards were rigid. Physical backing was outdated. Flexibility was necessary for stability. Currencies became representations instead of claims. Money no longer promised metal, it promised trust, and trust, unlike gold, has no physical limit. This is where the reset began. Central banks gained the ability to create money electronically, expand balance sheets without restraint, intervene in markets at will. At first, these tools were used cautiously, then selectively, then constantly. Crises still happened, but the response changed. Instead of allowing failures, the system absorbed them. Losses were socialized. Debts were rolled over. Risk was postponed instead of removed. This wasn't a collapse. It was a transition. The turning point wasn't a single decision. It was repetition. Every time markets shook, central banks stepped in. Every time debt grew, rates fell. Every time the system weakened, liquidity increased. What was once temporary support became standard policy. Interest rates approached zero, then crossed below it. Negative rates were once unthinkable. Now, they were discussed calmly. This was the reset, not announced but implemented. Money stopped being a store of value, became a policy instrument. Savings were discouraged. Debt was rewarded. The system no longer asked, "Is this sustainable?" It asked, "Can this be extended?" And as long as it could, it continued. Here's the paradox. Debt exploded, yet nothing broke. Governments carried levels of debt that would have caused immediate collapse decades earlier. Markets didn't panic. Currencies didn't vanish. Banks didn't close. Why? Because the rules had changed. Debt was no longer expected to be repaid in full. It was expected to be managed indefinitely. Old systems required closure. New systems require continuation. The global debt clock doesn't signal danger anymore. It signals dependence. Entire economies now rely on constant refinancing, permanent stimulus, central bank credibility. But the breaking point didn't arrive as a crash. It arrived as normality. The consequences weren't immediate, which made them harder to see. Asset prices rose faster than wages. Inequality widened without legislation. Ownership concentrated quietly. Those closest to newly created money benefited first. Those furthest away paid through inflation, instability, and lost purchasing power. This wasn't theft in the traditional sense. It was reordering. The financial reset shifted power away from voters, risk away from institutions, control towards centralized policy. People still worked, still paid taxes, still saved. But the value system beneath those actions had changed. The game was still being played, just under different rules. Every few years, calls for reform appear. regulation, transparency, accountability. But notice what never changes: the assumption that debt must grow, markets must be supported, money must remain flexible. Reforms address symptoms, not structure, because the reset wasn't an error. It was the solution to a problem governments refused to face: limits. Instead of accepting constraints, the system removed them. Once limits are gone, going back becomes politically impossible. Look around today. Digital currencies, programmable money, real-time monetary control. These aren't revolutions, they're extensions. Each layer adds efficiency. Each improvement adds oversight. Each innovation reduces friction and autonomy. Just like before, it's framed as progress. And just like before, the reset doesn't require collapse, it requires acceptance. Takeaway 1. The most powerful financial changes happen without crises. Takeaway 2. Debt is no longer a warning sign. It's a governance tool. Takeaway 3. When money becomes abstract, control becomes invisible. The financial reset wasn't a moment in time. It's a process. One that continues as long as people believe the numbers represent reality. The danger isn't collapse. The danger is permanence. Because systems that never fail never correct. And systems that never correct eventually forget who they were built for. If this video changed how you see debt, money, or power, subscribe. Not for answers, but for awareness. Because the most important resets aren't coming. They already happened.